Rethinking Leadership Development for the 21st Century, C-Suite Perspectives on Change. Talent and Representation Abstract. This article examines organizational perspectives on bridging leadership development gaps in three key areas: change management, talent development, and diversity inclusion. Executive surveys find that while disruptive change preparedness is a top priority, leadership programs often fail to adequately develop adaptability. To close this gap, companies emphasize developing agility, experimentation, and change-ready cultures. For talent development, identification must leverage broader strengths over past roles. Emerging leaders benefit from diverse mobility experiences through rotations and global assignments. Regarding diversity, representation is viewed as more than a social responsibility but a business imperative for accessing varied perspectives. Leaders recommend making inclusion central to mission strategy and re-evaluating sponsoring and sourcing approaches to give minority talent fair opportunities. Overall, holistically developing adaptive, diverse leaders through experiential learning better positions organizations to navigate complexity. As organizations have grown increasingly complex in the 21st century, leadership development has become a strategic priority for navigating disruptive change and fostering innovation. However, research suggests there remains a gap between the skills and diversity that executives believe is needed versus what is currently represented at senior levels. Today, we will examine C-suite perspectives on bridging the leadership development gap through the lenses of change management, talent development, and diversity inclusion. Change management, preparing leaders for disruption. According to a global survey of over 1,300 C-level executives conducted by Hedrick and Struggles, CEOs and boards recognize that preparing leaders to manage change is one of the most important issues facing organizations. Hedrick and Struggles, 2018. However, less than half of respondents said their leadership programs adequately address this need. As disruptive forces like new market entrants, emerging technologies, and shifting consumer preferences continuously reshape industries, leaders must be adept at both navigating abrupt changes and building an organizational culture resilient to disruption over the long term. Prioritizing adaptability and agility to bridge the leadership development gap surrounding change management. Executives recommend prioritizing adaptability and agility in talent development programs. As Diane Gerson, former CHRO of IBM, notes, in today's fast-moving world, the most important leadership quality is not technical expertise but rather the ability to adapt. HBR, 2016. Rather than focusing solely on narrow functional or industry skills, development initiatives should cultivate leaders' capacity for growth mindsets, continuous learning, and embracing uncertainty with confidence. At Danone, a global food-producing company facing disruption from nutrition health trends, they have implemented leadership programs emphasizing agility, experimentation, and entrepreneurship throughout all levels of the organization. Initiatives include rotational assignments across business units, innovation boot camps, where multidisciplinary teams brainstorm solutions to challenges, and a corporate incubator to test new concepts. According to Danone CHRO, preparing leaders for change means equipping them with the dexterity to constantly learn, unlearn, and relearn while demonstrating progress. HBR, 2016. Building a change-ready culture while developing individual leader adaptability is critical. Executives also stress the need to build a change-ready organizational culture where ambiguity and reinvention are the norm rather than the exception. As Sanjay Poonen, COO of VMware states, the half-life of skills is getting shorter and shorter. Companies must constantly reinvent or face disruption. At VMware, they foster a culture embracing change through transparent internal communications, talent mobility initiatives to spread new ideas, and reward recognition programs acknowledging risk-taking and innovation. HBR, 2016. To adequately equip leaders for disruption, development efforts should prioritize adaptability, agility, entrepreneurial mindsets, and cultivating cultures where reinvention and calculated risk-taking are institutionalized and celebrated. The next section will explore how organizations can enhance talent identification and development to meet evolving leadership needs. Talent development, identifying and growing the next generation as talent pipelines shift to incorporate more diverse experiences and competencies. Executives stress the need to reimagine leadership identification and development approaches. According to a Korn Ferry survey of 250 global organizations, over 75% of leaders believe they lack successors with the skills and experiences needed for future roles. Korn Ferry, 2018. There is a recognition that traditional, siloed development programs are insufficient for cultivating the multifaceted leaders of tomorrow. Rethinking identification processes to enhance emerging leader identification. Companies must leverage more expansive criteria beyond proven past performance. As Linda Grattan, professor at London Business School advises, successful organizations of the future will develop leaders based not just on what they have achieved in the past, but also on their potential to achieve great things in the future. HBR, 2011. With this lens, less traditional indicators like courage, curiosity, resilience, and adaptability take precedence over historically valued traits like seniority and experience in narrow functions. Many companies are innovating new identification methods informed by predictive analytics and holistic assessments of strengths. For example, Schneider Electric utilizes cognitive, behavioral assessment tools and simulations to better predict leaders' adaptability to change. This upfront identification allows them to customize development experiences accordingly to strengthen areas of future need versus past performance alone. CCL, 2019. Embracing development mobility. Once identified, developing emerging leaders requires dynamic, cross-functional experiences beyond traditional on-the-job training or event-based programs. Executives advocate for mobility and stretch assignments through rotational moves, temporary special project roles, international postings, and mentoring, coaching relationships. Developmental job experiences expose potential leaders to diverse challenges, competitive insights, and innovation from other areas of the business. At Walt Disney International, high-potential leaders are selected each year for a global leadership program involving placements in new business units and overseas assignments. The goal is to strengthen business acumen, cultural empathy, and relationship-building skills through an intensive period of mobility. According to Disney's CHRO, this approach has better prepared our future leaders for complexity, whether geographic expansion, new ventures, or organizational changes. HBR, 2016. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Representing the communities served, executives agree that a failure to develop diverse leaders prevents organizations from truly understanding and serving the diverse customer populations that power growth. Yet according to McKinsey research, less than 5% of C-level positions in the U.S. are held by racial ethnic minorities. McKinsey, 2018. Lack of representation limits strategic perspectives and problem-solving approaches. Viewing diversity as a business imperative to enhance leadership diversity. Executives advise viewing it not only as a moral responsibility but a business imperative. As Anthropic's CEO Dario Amodi states, the greatest predictor of a company's success is the diversity of its leadership. Diverse teams are simply better at solving complex problems. Anthropic, 2021. Where diversity has historically been addressed through compliance, inclusion must become a core aspect of an organization's identity, strategy, and brand. At Google, leadership maintains a very public focus on diversity as a driver of innovation and competitive advantage, not just social responsibility. For example, Google publishes annual diversity reports and discloses representation targets progress. They allocate dedicated recruiting resources to source from minority colleges, associations, and programs incentivizing managers on improving diversity. Numbers have become standard practice. Google. 2022. Re-evaluating sourcing and sponsorship approaches in addition to strategy shifts. Leadership development programs must evolve sourcing approaches, support structures and evaluation criteria to give minority talent equitable access to success. For example, Anthropic leverages AI to analyze recruiting patterns and root out potential biases. They also mandate sponsorship of at least one diverse candidate through senior leader mentorship. Anthropic. 2021. At Intel, employee resource groups focused on specific demographic cohorts play an active role identifying high-potential individuals from minority communities for senior roles traditionally lacking representation. Formal sponsorship programs then pair emerging leaders with C-level advocates who champion their career development through coaching. High-visibility projects and advocacy during promotions. Intel. 2019. Conclusion: bridging the leadership development gap requires a multifaceted approach addressing change management, talent perspectives, and diversity holistically as interconnected pillars of future-focused leadership. Individual leader adaptability, organizational reinforcement of reinvention, and courageous problem-solving, as well as diverse representation and perspectives, must all become hallmarks of exemplary leadership. When development recognizes complexity through dynamic, cross-functional experiences and talent assessment informed more by strengths than pedigree alone, organizations will better cultivate the strategic problem solvers demanded in today's business landscape. And when company mission, values, strategy, and brand are united behind inclusion as a driver of competitive advantage rather than separate initiative, real progress toward equitable leadership can be realized. If organizations commit to leadership development with the same discipline applied to strategies targeting profit margins or productivity metrics, they will be far better positioned to navigate uncertainty, capitalize on innovation, and meet the needs of customers in ways truly reflective of society served. By closing gaps in change management, talent, and diversity, exemplary leadership will emerge fully equipped to solve today's multifaceted challenges and those still unforeseen.